Hi, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the class. This week we turn to a different topic. Last week we have learned the personal dimensions of technology, and this week we turn to patriotism, civil disobedience, and the rule of law. As usual, we still have three readings to go. The first one is Plato's Crito, and the second reading is Martin Luther King's a letter from a Birmingham jail. And the third reading material, which we will be discussing on Friday, is Sam Kenner's Patriotism as Bad Faith. Okay, so for Monday today, we will talk about Plato's Crito. Before we get into the writing today, I'd like to talk um, something about the context of the writing Crito. We know that in ancient Greece, the society was organized by many different city states. Those cities are independent and they serve as the center of political, economic, and cultural life. During the 5th century BC, Sparta and Athens are the two largest city states in ancient Greece. The two had fighted against each other for over 2 decades. That was the Peloponnesian War between 431 to 404 BC. Okay. Um, during the war, Socrates was also a soldier and he fought for Athens. But due to the political turmoil of Athens, eventually it was defeated by Sparta. So after that, Athens reorganized its government. Spartans set up an oligarchy government in Athens, which was called the 30. Um, um, as far as we know, that Plato's uncle was one of those 30 tyrants. And among those 30 tyrants, there are also some of the tyrants they had a close relationship with Socrates. But this oligarchy was short-lived due to their oppressive politics. According to some historians, they probably killed almost 5% of Athenian population. They exiled democratic supporters, and they also confiscated citizens' property. Um, Democracy was restored after 8 months of the dominance of the oligarchy politics. It was after the restoration of democracy of Athens that Socrates was accused of committing two sins. He was accused of first not believing in the gods, in whom the city believes, but in other demons that are lawful, according to the first thing here. He was also accused of corrupting the youth. Okay, so we know that during his entire life, Socrates wandered around the squares, the streets, marketplaces to have philosophical dialogues with young Athenians to explore philosophical questions, right? For that reason, he was accused by the democratic government of Athens, and he was sentenced to death penalty. And there are several dialogues which was written by Plato. We can know the details of Socrates' death. So here we see three dialogues of Plato regarding Socrates' death. The first one is Apology, in which Socrates defended himself against uh, against his charges. So that was in the court. He claimed that he was not corrupting the youth or believing in the wrong gods. He explained uh, what he was doing around the city to the Athenians, and from the perspective of Socrates, he actually considered that what he was doing was for the goodness of Athens. He compares himself as the gadfly of the city, and he actually was rescuing the city from the sickness. Okay, and the second dialogue here is Crito. The reading we're going to learn today. Um, the dialogue was happening in the prison of Socrates, and he was talking about with Crito talking about the disobedience to the laws, and also about the nature of legal obligation. We will talk this writing in details later. And the third dialogue here about Socrates' death is Phaedo. So Phaedo described the last day of Socrates in the prison, and there are two disciples visiting Socrates, and Socrates um, began to talk about the immortality of the soul. Okay, he in the video he built three arguments to argue for the immortality of the soul, and also the duality between the soul and the body. So those are the three dialogues regarding Socrates' death, and we are going to learn Crito here. And next, you can also see there is a painting about the death of Socrates, which was painted by a French artist in the 18th century. As we can observe here, in the middle of the painting, there was the old man in the white robe who sits upright on the bed. That was Socrates. His left hand was gesturing in the air, pointing up to the sky, and his right hand was extending for the cup of poison hemlock. At the same time, we can see that he was still talking to his visitors during the last day. The topic was about the immortality of the soul, and also about how philosophy is a training of the death. Among the visitors, besides the two main persons who participate the conversation for the last day, Cibius and Simias, there are other visitors here during the last day. And among the visitors, one person was Crito, Socrates' wealthy friend, who also had tried to rescue him out of the prison and help him to escape from the cell, and to other, for example, other city states. Okay, The reason for Crito to help Socrates to escape was the unjust charges that Socrates received. So the main questions for the writing Crito here are the question like whether should a person follow an unjust trial, or if he has a chance to escape the unjust sentence, should he escape from the prison? Okay, and in order to address the question here, according to Socrates' conversation with Crito, and also the strategy of Plato's writing here, he follows several steps. He talks about why it is important for a person to be guided by reason. And according to Socrates and also according to Plato's writing here, being guided by reason is a common ground for us to begin a conversation. That is very important that we agreed that we are going to be guided by reason. After that, Socrates talks about the difference between the many and the one. The many probably refer to the citizens of Athens. And also, he talks about what is a good life. Ought a man to do what he admits to be right or not? Okay? And eventually, um, toward the last stage of the conversation here, Socrates talks about an imaginary conversation between the laws and the government and Socrates. That means Socrates imagined he himself was interrogated by the laws and the government if he tried to escape. So those are the questions for the writing of Crito, and also are the steps of the entire argument here. Now, remember that Socrates has defended himself in the court according to Plato's apology. What he says in the court about what he was doing around the city. He says, Men of Athens, I honor and love you, but I shall obey the God rather than you. And while I have life and strength, I shall never chase from the practice and teaching of philosophy. So, from this statement, we can think about the writing of Crito, about his conversation with Crito. That means to obey the unjust trial or to be disobedient to the trial is also a part of the practice and teaching of philosophy. Okay, and now we are going to turn to the entire passage about his statement of being a gadfly of the city of Athens. So here is the entire part for Socrates to claim himself being the gadfly of the city. Uh, while he defended himself in the court, as you can see from the passage in the apology here, the argument is absolutely beautiful. According to what Socrates says here, it is very interesting for him to try to argue against those two charges. Okay, so here he says, I am the gadfly of the Athenian people given to them by God, and they will never have another if they kill me. And now, Athenians, I'm not going to argue for my own sake, as you may think, but for yours, that you may not sin against the God by condemning me, who am his gift to you. So this is very clear for Socrates to claim his innocence. Okay, that means if the Athenian people, if they condemn Socrates, then they committed their sins against the God, because Socrates was God's gift to the Athenian people, right? So, for if you kill me, you will not easily find a successor to me, who, if I may use such a ludicrous figure of speech, am a sort of gadfly given to the state by God. And the state is a great and noble steed who is tardy in his motions owing to his very size, and it requires to be stirred into life. So Socrates is the person, is the gadfly uh, to stir the city state, the Athenian people into life. I am that gadfly which God has attached to the state, and all day long and in all places am always fastening upon you, arousing you, and persuading and reproaching you. So that is what he was doing around the city to practice and teaching philosophy. And according to Socrates himself, that was not a sin at all, right? You will not easily find another like me, and therefore I would advise you to spare me. So that is a defense from Socrates for himself, and to a certain point, he even uh, made a joke in part of the apology. He says, "For the goodness I have done to the city." As being the gadfly, actually the city needed to pay money to Socrates rather than send himself to the death penalty. Okay, so now the practice and the teaching of philosophy is so important, and according to the beginning of the writing here, um, that is also the starting point for we to consider whether to obey an unjust trial or to be disobedient to the unjust trial. Okay, and the first issue in the writing of Crito is about the very important part of philosophy, that is the part of being guided by reason. So, why is reason important? Crito, as the rich man of Athens and also as a close friend of Socrates, he tried to use his money to buy Socrates' freedom, um, assisting him to escape from the cell to other city states. Okay, and Crito probably reasoned in a way that he considered it was unjust for Athenians to sentence Socrates to the death penalty, so he needs to do something to restore justice and set things right, right? And for most people, if we suffered from injustice, we usually would consider to do something to restore the justice. Okay, but Socrates considered the question in a different way, and he tried to uh, think with Crito what is wrong with Crito's decision to rescue him out of the prison. So now here is the point the philosophical point here, we need to start a conversation to see what is wrong with Crito's decision to rescue Socrates out of the cell. Okay, uh, and the beginning point is that they have to agree on the point that they both are guided by reason. Okay, so that is the beginning point to start a philosophical conversation here. And according to what he writes here, he says Socrates says, "Dear Crito, your zeal is invaluable." So that means I appreciate your zeal if a right one. So if your decision is a right decision, then it is very valuable, and I'm going to appreciate your zeal. But if wrong, the greater the zeal, the greater the evil. So this is what he was going to do in this dialogue to argue whether Crito's decision is right or wrong. Okay, and therefore we ought to consider whether this sin shall be done or not. For I am and always have been one of those natures who must be guided by reason whatever the reason may be, which upon reflection appears to me to be the best. And now that this fortune has come upon me, that means my freedom was going to be fulfilled by the money you have. Okay, so that is the fortune here. I cannot put away the reasons which I have before given, the principles which I have hitherto honored and revered I still honor, and unless we can find other and better principles on the instant, I'm certain not to agree with you. So that means in the entire argument here, Socrates was going to be persistent, okay, to the principle or to the philosophy um, he has honored for his entire life. No, not even if the power of the multitude could inflict many more imprisonments, confiscations, deaths, frightening us like children with hobgoblin terrors. But what will be the first way of considering the question? So that means Socrates was going to talk to Crito about whether uh, whether it is right to escape from the prison or not. It is actually a common question for many people if they suffered from the unjust trial. They were going to think about to do something. So the basic question is escape or not. Uh, According to Socrates, whether I ought or ought not to try to escape without the consent of the Athenians, and if I am clearly right in escaping, then I will make the attempt, but if not, I will abstain. So that means if he considered that to escape from the prison was a right thing to do, then he would just do it. But if he consider, or if after the reasoning, if escape was not the right thing to do, he would just abstaining from escaping out of the cell. Okay, so to answer the fundamental question for the writing of Crito, Socrates began a conversation with Crito. And Socrates imagined a conversation between himself and the laws and the government of Athens. he imagined the conversation about what if he break from the prison. So during the imagined interrogation of the laws and the government, Socrates reasoned with Crito about several questions, which gradually reveal the arrow for Socrates to escape from the prison. The first question the laws asked here, as you can see, the first point here, in the first place, did we not bring you into existence? The laws asked whether Socrates had any complaint about his own existence. Does he have any objection to those who regulate marriage in Athens? Does he have any objection to the marriage of his mother and his father, which begat his existence? That is to see, Socrates' existence actually owes to the marriage system of the city. Okay, without the aid of the city of Athens, Socrates cannot exist. So on the first point here, Socrates agreed what the laws claimed. Then the laws proposed to to ask the second question here, which says, "Were not the laws who have the charge of this right in commanding your father to train you in music and gymnastic?" So, with this question here, Socrates agreed with the laws that he was nurtured and educated by the city state. And he was a child of the city state of Athens. Okay, he was not on equal terms to the authority of the city state. Then it goes to the third question here, which asks, would you have any right to strike or revile or do any other evil to a father or to your master? The laws asked Socrates if his parents or masters who had contributed a lot to his existence, education, and also many other benefits. Does he have a right to do evil to them? Socrates says he doesn't, and he couldn't. He doesn't have a right to do any evil to his parents, to his masters, if there is a master. Okay, and then the laws follows with the fourth question here. Um, the laws asked, has a philosopher like you failed to discover that our country is more to be valued and higher and holier far than mother or father or any ancestor? So here, the laws asked Socrates to compare parental love and patriotic love. Okay, we normally would think that the patriotic love in public sphere takes much more responsibilities and usually the patriotic love is valued higher than the family love in our private sphere. Okay, so after this comparison here about the love in the private sphere and the love in the public sphere, um, the laws actually lead Socrates to the next question. So just like sometimes we endure parental punishment in silence, we should also endure the punishment of the state in silence as well. Even if the state causes us to fight in a battle, even if um, it might lead us to wounds or death, we should follow as it is the right thing to do, according to Socrates here. Now, as you can see with this imagined interrogation, by arguing that he owns his existence, nurturing, education, and many other benefits of being a citizen of Athens. Socrates has already succeeded to show Crito that he had no right to escape, but to just endure the death penalty in silence, because he seemed to have signed a contract with Athens. As the second point on this slide, it says, but he who has experience of the manner in which we order justice and administer the state, and still remains, has entered into an implied contract that he will do as we command him. Okay, so that makes no excuse for Socrates to escape, right? Then after that, Socrates pushed further the interrogation of the laws and the government, stated that Socrates himself is very patriotic. He is one of those most faithful citizens of Athens, and there are plenty of evidence showing how Socrates has strongly attached himself to the city-state of Athens. The laws stated like, first of all, Athenians, you have been the most constant resident in the city, which, as you never leave, you may be supposed to love. For you never went out of the city either to see the games, except once when you went to the Isthmus or to any other place, and that's when you were on military service. For example, when Socrates fighted for Athens during the war between Sparta and Athens, right? Nor did you travel as other men do. So this is huge evidence that Socrates himself was one of those most faithful um, citizen, citizens of Athens. And second here, but you pretended that um, you preferred death to exile, and that you were not grieved at death. So from these two evidence here, two pieces of evidence here, it is apparently that it is Socrates, his own choice to be the citizen of Athens. And as a citizen of Athens, he has the obligation, the legal obligation to follow the trial. Even the trial is unjust, he should endure the trial, the unjust trial silently. Okay. So, with the imagined interrogation of the laws and the government, Socrates reasoned with Crito, and they arrived at the conclusion that it was not right for Socrates to escape from the cell, for he had 70 years of liberty to leave Athens, and he didn't choose to leave. He should not leave at this moment. So the laws concluded that you depart in innocence, suffer, and not a doer of evil, a victim, not of the laws, but of men. But if you go forth, returning evil for evil and injury for injury, breaking the covenant and agreements which you have made with us, and wrongdoing those whom you ought least to wrong, that is to see yourself, your friends, your country, and us, we shall be angry with you while you live, and our brethren, the lords in the world below, will receive you as an enemy, for they will know that you have done your best to destroy us. So that is to see, if he escape, he will turn himself into the enemy of the state, which Socrates doesn't hope himself to be the enemy of the state. So he will just obey his legal obligation here of being the citizen of Athens to endure death penalty silently. To this point, Crito actually has to agree that Socrates' integrity should not be broken, and he should not buy his freedom to help him to escape. Okay, so that is all for Crito today. I do suggest you to read the entire text to enjoy full details of the argument, and I will talk to you soon.